It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
What's up? What's happening? Welcome in to the Take Command podcast. That is Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman. And if you are watching us on YouTube, you see we are in the war room. It is time, Logan, for Mock Draft 4.0, the post-free agency mock, post-phase 1 of free agency mock draft. This should be fun. We also know now that Justin Fields has been traded, like Chicago's going to take Caleb Williams. If it doesn't, we're gonna throw this draft simulator out the window. But PFF, we personally accosted Trevor Sikkema to make him update this thing.
Did you talk to him?
I have talked to Trevor. I did not personally
accost him.
Aggressively, physically assault him to update the draft simulator. It just was time for them to do so. So we're back on Pro Football Focus's draft simulator. And this is going to be fun. I think this is going to be interesting for people. I think some people might get mad at us, but that's kind of the nature of it. We could do the thing that is the most obvious that everyone is doing, and people would be mad at us. People have strong opinions. It is that time of year, Logan, and I'm excited to do this mock draft.
Yeah, and I think, we're should we kind of preview the draft here, Craig, and just kind of tell them what we're thinking about doing, or just let it ride?
I think we just let it ride, because I think it's going to become very apparent very quickly, because I'm going to hit start. Chicago's going to take Caleb Williams, and this is the fun part. The Commanders are at 2, so there won't be very long until people see what we want to do. I will say the way we're going to do this, we will eventually do a one round, we do every pick mock draft, which will be really fun, but we are going to do this in the same style that we have, especially since Washington has added yet another pick in our fun range here with the Sam Howell trade. So we are going to pick for Washington. We are going to let the draft simulator pick the rest. So that means picks 2, 36, 40, 67, 78, and 100 are all ours, Logan, to select unless we perhaps, wink, wink, make a trade. So with that, any other precursor? Are we ready to go?
No, I think we're ready to go.
All right, let's do it. Start draft. Oh, would you look at that? The Chicago Bears took Caleb Williams. All right, so we're on the clock at number 2.
Yeah.
Ring! It's the trade phone. Let's talk about this from the Washington side. What teams are you targeting that you are hoping call Washington? What kind of range are we looking at here? Both initially and then where do you want to feel confident that you ultimately end up?
Well, I think the team that's going to probably trade up is Minnesota, right? And they're picking out 11. Is that correct? And so I think that's the team that I think is they are trying actively with this packaging of picks in the first round. I believe. I think Daniel Jeremiah believes, Bucky Brooks, Mel Kiper Jr. Everyone believes to get up into the top 5 to trade for a quarterback. And so, if they want to get their guy, which is anybody non-named Caleb Williams, because I think it's kind of a foregone conclusion that that's who the Chicago Bears are selecting, they're going to need to get to 2. So I'm very confident that they have called or talked to or something and this is all speculation, but they are going to try and contact Washington and see whether they're willing to trade back. Now, Washington could easily say, no, get out of here. We believe we've got a guy here, and Drake May, Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy, maybe Bo Nix, who knows, right? Whatever their flavor of the month is, they want to pick them there at 2. But if they don't love those guys, I think this is a very viable thing where they say, okay, what do you got? You show us the package, show us the offer, and we'll make a decision about what we need to do in the draft this year.
Yes. And so there are obviously very strong opinions on this. What I was actually texting with Trevor the other day about in reality was after Minnesota made their trade. And I was like, man, that double trade scenario that you mocked after the Super Bowl feels a lot more real potentially at this point for Washington. And he just goes, for the life of me, I can't figure out why they wouldn't take Drake at 2. He's a Drake May guy. Our guy Nate Tice, Drake May guy. You have Matt Miller, on the other hand, great draft analyst for ESPN, who's been on the show with us a couple times, being like, I don't understand for the life of me why Washington with Cliff Kingsbury wouldn't take Jaden Daniels. Yeah. So there are strong opinions here, but this is ultimately our mock. We're playing GMs here. I'll be the assistant. You be the head decision maker here. I think that's how everybody would like it, including me. And so I guess it comes down to, first of all, okay, the trade phone's ringing. We know we're going to have offers. Do we love one of these guys? Are we willing to even pick up the phone? Right.
Yeah.
And to me, the answer is yes. My amateur evaluations here is that I don't love any of these guys. I have real questions about Drake May. I have real questions about Jaden Daniels. I also have things I love about both of those guys. I also have real questions and things I love about JJ McCarthy. Yeah. And I think that those three being close enough makes me willing to listen. Now, I think when I talk about trade strategy here, I'm going to want to trade down and trade back up, and I want to see how this board plays out. And if Jaden falls to a certain spot, I am leaping at the opportunity to come back up. Yeah. If he goes off the board at 3, I'm getting real nervous about getting back up, maybe even with Arizona at 4 to go ahead and take McCarthy. But I think it's what level of prospect do we think these guys are? And then also, do we have a really strong preference based off style? Because they're also very different players on who we think fits with what we want to do.
Yeah, I think offensively, like the thing about Jaden Daniels, again, that is so enticing is what he gives in terms of floor. And you've mentioned this a couple times on the show. And it's like that's very, very enticing. The explosive playmaking ability, the quick release. Again, there's some issues from an analytics standpoint in terms of his target distribution. But golly, if he slid down even a little bit, that'd be pretty exciting. And so, same thing with Drake May. I think there's a little bit more growing there for him personally. Again, he's a guy that I think could be an excellent football player, kind of in the mold of like Aaron Rodgers if he were to sit for a year. And this team is not afforded that opportunity. So it kind of comes back to is this situation good enough to foster growth in one of those guys as it currently exists? And I'm not sold yet that that's the solution. I think we need to probably really think about trading back out of that spot. And again, I think Minnesota at 11, getting 2 first rounds this year, maybe some more draft capital next year feels like the right decision. So I definitely, I do like Jaden Daniels a lot. I do like Drake May a lot. But in terms of for this situation right now, in terms of changing your franchise, if someone calls, I'm definitely going to listen. And if the package isn't right, let's say it's 2 firsts this year and a second, I'm probably like, you know what, or a third, I'm okay. But if it's multiple first round picks, that can be franchise changing, not only for the draft. I think it's important people understand that, not only for the draft, but for free agency acquisition and for moving and kind of positioning yourself for drafts for years to come.
So one last thing before we look at the offers, that the way we're doing this now, the trade acceptance is on, we could force the trade, but we're going to use PFF's model here. But I had a really great conversation on the radio show. We're recording this Wednesday night. So earlier today with Sam Fortier, who his little pet hobby horse is these draft charts. He is sick. A gigantic nerd about them. And so I would highly recommend, I would even recommend hitting pause on this as you're listening. Go listen to the first 10 minutes of the interview with Sam from the Hoffman Show today to understand how the draft charts work. The very condensed 30 seconds or less, I'll try this in 20 seconds or less version, is you're not actually trying to get equal on both sides. So, and that's a mistake that frankly I've made on some of these trades that we've talked about, is you're not trying to be like, I've got 3,000 points, you've got 3,000 points. It's, hey, you're coming up, and I got 2 other teams on the phone. You're going to have to offer me 3,500 points in return for my 3,000. So we're going to listen to what PFF says here. But as you think about some of these trades and the numbers and you see things floating around, you're looking for a positive return as the team trading down. So with that, 2 on the board for Washington. They will not have to give up anything else unless they try to squeeze a 4th first out of this. And, that gets hairy. So 11, 23, round 1 next year. PFF's simulator does not allow us to mess around with 2026 picks. I also don't think you're getting 4 firsts in return.
No,
so I don't think we necessarily need to. So then the question is,
wanted to get a supplementary second in the following year, that would be something to consider.
So the problem with Minnesota is they don't have a 2025 second. That is part of what they traded to Houston for this first rounder. So do we want a 3rd rounder from them next year? Do we want a 4th rounder? I guess the next highest pick they have is the 3rd rounder that they have next year.
Yep. I think that's a fairly even trade, or fair, a one that I would consider. 3 first round picks, a first rounder next year. So I'd have 2 first rounder picks next year. I could trade up or trade back if I needed to. And it just feels like a good opportunity. So,
and I'm also going to say, if I was negotiating this trade, I'd be like, hey, let's actually make that a second in 2026. I can't do that on this trade, but I would be like, I want 3 firsts and a second. I want your next second. And so I'm putting that out there. Let's pretend that's the trade. But we don't have to worry about that in terms of this, other than hopefully they say yes to this trade because, we're not doing a mock draft for 2026 right now. Offer trade. Minnesota has accepted our trade. So it's 4-for-1, 11-23, round 1 next year, round 3 next year, which is actually round 2 in 2026. So the Vikings are on the clock, Logan. Let's resume the draft. And so now I would say, as we do, we are watching for when Jaden Daniels, or presuming they're coming up to take Drake May, when Jaden Daniels comes off the board is, I think, kind of the big, or all of a sudden is still on the board at a silly place, is kind of what we're looking for here. So hit resume, Drake May, Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors. Yeah. Okay, Joe Alt. So now we're sitting at pick 6, and Jaden hasn't gone yet.
Yeah, so I would be scrambling back up. I think the problem is that it's in the division. I think in a real world scenario, I think you try to trade with the LA Chargers here. I think that's probably the most likely scenario because I think they're, in terms of roster construction, they're probably looking for another first round pick, multiple offensive linemen. They took Joe Alt in this draft, but I think if for example they're not willing to, I'm definitely calling New York. And obviously the division rival is going to make you pay a premium, but I do think getting back up into this range is probably important for a talent like Jaden Daniels. Yeah.
Are we willing to risk one more pick because we don't want to do a deal in the division, or do we want to try to make this trade here?
I want to make sure we get a guy, and I think Jaden Daniels is a guy. Like, I know at 2, it feels a little bit dicey because the pick is so high, but I think he's an explosive stick of dynamite, man. He can run, he can throw, he's got a quick release. Maybe not the strongest arm in the world, but I also love the stories you're hearing about him coming out of LSU, people that have worked with him, his work ethic, his approach. Herm Edwards on John Keim's podcast talked about his leadership ability. I don't think you want to risk not getting that guy. And I do think there is a difference. While I like J.J. McCarthy a lot, I think there's a big enough difference where I want to make sure I get back up there and have a shot to take him and change the franchise. Because not only have we gotten all this first round draft capital, but now we can also get a quarterback that I think can be a franchise piece, given having some of these other kind of blue chip prospects around him.
All right, so let's then try to maneuver this. We got 6 and 11 is they're going to want the higher of the 2 picks. You're not going to trade 23 here. So it's 6 and 11. And then let's see if they'll take 40. That says the trade will likely be accepted. Can we then squeeze 6 and 70 for 11 and 40?
I think
this trade has a 91% chance to be accepted. There's no way they would do that.
Yeah, so for me, I think it goes back to that thing you were talking about with Sam, and how they want to come out of this on top. And for me, if I'm giving up a second round pick and a first round, and we're swapping first, I'm giving up a second round pick for a player that I think is going to change my franchise, I jump at that opportunity. So this feels like, we don't need 70, I think, just to make it realistic. Like, take that off the board.
I'll do 107 just to make people happy, but also we don't have to deal with 107 because that's a 4th round pick. And so that's not an extra pick on our plate to draft. So we're going to go 6 and 107 for 11 and 40, and we are going to offer that. The Giants have accepted. We are back on the clock. And Logan, it is worth mentioning, Marvin Harrison is still somehow stupidly on the board here because they go Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors, Joe Alt as those picks. It is tempting. And then, do you just mess with Bo Nix at 23 or whatever? But I think you're doing this because Jaden Daniels has fallen, and you easily just take Jaden Daniels here and keep it moving.
Yeah, and again, there are some issues with his game, but I do think, again, having some more pieces around him, being able to draft better the following year in 2025, I guess, man, we're way out there now, is going to just accelerate the process around this piece that, again, in Cliff Kingsbury's offense, they're going to do a lot of stuff from the gun. I know they want to get away from the air raid system, but having a running quarterback in that system is a huge advantage, I feel. So this feels like a great move and great value to me.
It's a huge advantage, and he has a lot of experience and a lot of confidence throwing outside. And that is the piece that is a good fit for Cliff Kingsbury with Jaden Daniels. Some of the RPO stuff is kind of the Drake May fit, but I think this is a great fit on the ability and the confidence to throw outside. 2 wide receivers, something that we've seen a struggle with some quarterbacks. So Jaden Daniels is our pick at number 6 after the trade with the Giants. All right, then we got Marvin Harrison coming off at Tennessee, Byron Murphy to the Falcons. The Bears take Talisi Fuaga at 10 or at 9, Jared Verse at 10 to Florida State. His stock is all over the place.
Yeah,
Troy Fontenot to the Giants at 11, Cooper DeJean at 12 to the Broncos. Jazon Newton, defensive lineman to Vegas. Quinyon Mitchell to the Saints. Nate Wiggins to the Colts. Tyler Nubin to the Seahawks. Terrion Arnold, the corner out of Alabama, to the Jags. Dallas Turner, the edge out of Alabama, to the Bengals. McCarthy goes 19 to his former college coach. To the other LA team. He goes to the Rams, not to the Chargers. And then Brock Bowers all the way to 20. Yeah. There are some scenarios where all of a sudden he's slipping. And then you get a little bit of an offensive line run. You get Amarius Mims and Jackson Powers Johnson at 21 and 22 to the Dolphins and the Eagles. And look who is the top guy on the board for Washington at 23. Olu Fashanu is available.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of hoping that Amarius Mims would fall. I think he's just tremendously talented, and when you watch him, he's just like a dancing bear out there. But I think Olu Fashanu, I do have questions about his game, so it wouldn't surprise me if he were to fall in the draft like this, because I do think he's a little high-hipped. I think he's a little tight in the ankles, which makes me worry about his ability to bend. But I think him or J.C. Latham here would be an awesome pick. Latu would be awesome. And I think this just shows you, again, the value of trading back. Like, you could get a premier left tackle. I think if you're looking for differences in opinion there, differences in why, Olu Fashanu over J.C. Latham, for example, I think he's got the athleticism to play left, and then or you get an elite pass rusher, and I think that's pretty special. And so, the idea of drafting who I think is maybe the most refined pass rusher in the draft, and Latu is very intoxicating for me. I think J.C. Latham's awesome. I think he could be special. I think Olu Fashanu, I worry about his play strength. So for me, it kind of, honestly, just because of preference, I think any three of those guys you probably feel pretty good about, Craig. And I'm getting juiced because, like, having this piece come in day one and kind of fill this role would be pretty spectacular.
So here's actually where I'm at with this. I think I might lean towards Latu. Yeah. You're telling me I get the best pass rusher in the draft and I still have 36 and 40?
Yeah. It's pretty special, man. And then there's guys like Chris Paul or Patrick Paul. There's guys like, Kingsley Sumatai, who are developmental guys. Like, I think, and that's the other thing, is I think you got to trust your board here a little bit. And right now, according to my big board, which is always in flux, I think the best player on the board is Latu. That's my personal opinion. But I also think Olu Fashanu is a special talent, a special athlete at the position. I do think he has potential issues, like I just mentioned, but he could be pretty special, and I think a guy like Tyler Guyton also could be pretty special in terms of their athletic upside. So there's a lot of opportunity here to get a really excellent football player. Can we go to the top, whatever? Is this the top guys or is this just the O-lineman?
That's just the O-lineman, because I just wanted to say, like, I'm thinking ahead, like, who can I get tomorrow on round two? You got Fashanu and Latham still on the board. Guyton's probably a first rounder. Jordan Morgan is a guy a lot of people like. Sua Mataya, Patrick Paul. There are a ton of guys that are available that I feel confident I'm going to get one at 36 or 40. Yeah. And if you tell me I can get the best guy on the board in at a position I need, by the way, and a skill set that I need in Latu, like, that's probably my pick. But Peyton Wilson, Brian Thomas Jr., Adonai Mitchell, Zach Frazier, they obviously just signed Biotish, so that's probably not. Lad McConkey's like a receiver that a lot of guys really in the league really like. Kool-Aid McKinstry at corner. Like, there's so many good players on the board.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of good football players. And again, I just go back to, like, this is the value of trading back. And obviously, I think it's a little bit maybe wishful thinking that Jaden Daniels slides like that. But I do think because of the diversity of quarterback evaluation, they could be like, hey, man, like I'm talking about New England, hey, man, screw it. Let's take someone we know is going to be good. We have Jacoby Brissett. Let's take an offensive tackle. Let's take a receiver and let him sit for a year, build this roster up so it can foster growth in a young quarterback, and let's see what happens. So I do think this is while maybe not the most likely solution, it's not unrealistic. And I think if I'm you, I tend to agree. I think Latu is probably the highest rated player on my personal big board that's available right here. So I'd probably take him.
All right. That's the pick. We're in agreement. Logan takes a Bruin / we take a Bruin. Latu off the board for Washington at 23. All right. So then Dallas goes Brian Thomas Jr. Green Bay takes Fashanu. Bucks on the clock take Braswell, the edge out of Alabama. Adonai Mitchell to Arizona at 27. Guyton goes 28 to Buffalo. Ray Shaw, the corner out of Mizzou, goes 29 to Detroit. TJ Tampa goes to Baltimore. Graham Barton goes to the Niners. And Latham is the last pick in the first round to the Chiefs.